I always believed I'd seen the worst of humanity in courtrooms, liars, abusers, manipulators. But nothing prepared me for the night I watched my own daughter get slapped across the face, while her mother-in-law applauded. That was the moment something inside me snapped awake, because they did not know who they were dealing with. And they had just declared war on the wrong mother. That night began like any other Sunday dinner, a ritual that once brought warmth to our home before grief hollowed it out. March 20th, the birthday of my late husband, Robert. I remember the feeling in my chest as I drove up the hill toward Ariana's new house, the one she bought with half of her father's inheritance. A gorgeous home perched above the city, with glass walls and a view that made evening lights shimmer like constellations. I stepped out of the car with a heaviness I hadn't shaken since Robert's death. Ariana insisted I shouldn't be alone. "Dad wouldn't want you to spend the night by yourself," she had said. She didn't know that every corner of my empty house whispered his name. When she opened the door, I noticed the first thing immediately: her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hug was stiff. Her body felt tense, like she was making sure no part of her clothing shifted. No sleeve slid up, no bruise was revealed. Her hair was cut shorter, something she never did without telling me. Her blouse was long-sleeved despite the warm air. "Are you okay?" I whispered. She answered too quickly. "Just tired, Mom." But 32 years in courtrooms had taught me that the most dangerous lies are the ones people tell themselves. And Ariana's eyes held the same hesitancy I had seen in dozens of victims before they finally broke down in my office. I should have pushed. I didn't. That was my first mistake. Inside the table was beautifully set crystal glasses, polished cutlery, candles flickering to make everything look warmer than it felt. At the head of the table stood Mark, my son-in-law, handsome, charming, and as hollow as a painted statue. "Mother-in-law," he beamed. "So good to see you." He was all perfect teeth and practiced warmth, the kind of man who rehearses his smile in the mirror. And standing just behind him was his mother, Helen, elegant in a way that felt sharp instead of soft, polished instead of warm. She kissed my cheek with a whispery, poisonous sweetness. "Alana dear, what a joy to have you." Something in her tone always crawled under my skin. We sat, Mark at the head, Helen to his right, me across from her, and Ariana between them both like a bird trapped in a cage she didn't know how to escape from. Dinner began. Helen dominated the conversation, talking about her renovations, her friends at the country club, her poor, widowhood, her sacrifices. She complimented Mark at every opportunity and criticized Ariana at every pause. "The biscuits are a little cold," she murmured. "The gravy is too salty, don't you think, son?" In my day, wives woke up earlier. Every comment was a needle, and Ariana shrank with each one. I watched Ariana serve food with trembling hands. I watched how Mark never said thank you. I watched how Helen smirked every time my daughter lowered her eyes. Then it happened. Ariana leaned over to refill Mark's glass. Her hand shook, barely, but a drop of water fell on the tablecloth. Just a drop. The silence that followed felt like a blade sliding slowly across the room. Mark set down his fork with deliberate calm. The soft clink of metal on porcelain echoed like a warning shot. "Do you see what you did?" he asked, his voice low and chilling. Ariana opened her mouth to apologize, but the apology never came out. Mark stood up in one sharp motion. It was so fast my brain refused to register it at first, his hand slicing through the air, striking my daughter's face once, twice, 3 times. The sound, God, the sound, skin on skin, echoing against marble floors and glass walls. Ariana's chair tipped over. She hit the floor with a sickening thud, curling instinctively, hands raised to protect herself. My vision blurred with red, my pulse pounded in my ears, my body froze, not from fear but from shock so total it locked every muscle. And then I heard the applause. Slow, satisfied, monstrous applause. "That is how she learns to behave," said Helen, smiling with a twisted pride. "A clumsy wife needs correction." I felt the world tilt. My stomach churned. Something ancient and furious surged inside me. 30 seconds passed. 30 seconds where every lie Ariana had told me suddenly made sense. Every excuse, every forced smile, every long sleeve in hot weather. I was not paralyzed, I was calculating. I rose slowly from my chair. Mark watched me, expecting hysterics. But I did not scream. I reached for my purse with a surgeon's steadiness. My hand did not shake, not once. I dialed a number I had saved on speed dial for 20 years. "Commander Miller," I said, my voice cold enough to frost glass. "This is attorney Alana Vance." I need an immediate domestic violence response unit at 345 Palm Avenue. Apartment 8002. Mark's confidence cracked. What are you doing? He demanded. I'm recording. I said simply, setting my phone on the table's speaker on. Then I looked him dead in the eyes. Repeat what you just did. Go ahead. I have all night. Whose skin went pale. An arrogant man who suddenly realized he had miscalculated. Never underestimate a mother, especially not one who has spent her life putting monsters like him behind bars. Within 17 minutes, sirens wailed outside. Police stormed the apartment. Ariana was shaking in my arms. Mark was handcuffed, sputtering threats. Helen was arrested as an accomplice, screaming that we were ruining her family. But the truth was simple: they had ruined themselves. And as I held my daughter, listening to her sob out years of quiet suffering, I made a silent promise. This wasn't justice. Not yet. This was only the beginning. The night Mark and Helen were arrested should have felt like a victory. But victories don't come that easily. Not in real life, and never in cases like this. I brought Ariana home with me because there was no way I was letting my daughter spend another night in that house. Not a single minute. She looked fragile, pale, her cheeks still red where Mark's hand had struck her. She walked through the rooms of her childhood home like a ghost. Like a woman trying to remember who she used to be before life tried to erase her. I took her to her old bedroom. The room still smelled faintly of lavender, the way it did when she was a teenager studying late for exams. Her sky blue quilt was still neatly folded. Her framed awards lined the walls: science fairs, engineering competitions, graduation photos. She touched the edge of her bed and whispered, "I haven't slept here in years." Her voice cracked, not from nostalgia but from a bruised memory. I helped her into clean pajamas, made her chamomile tea, and sat beside her, just like when she was little. "Tell me everything," I said softly. "From the beginning." Ariana stared into the steam rising from her mug. Her silence stretched long enough that I almost thought she wouldn't speak. Then she did. "Do you remember our honeymoon in Greece?" I nodded. I remembered the photos: sunsets, white dresses, the sea glowing like molten sapphire. She looked so happy in those pictures. Painfully happy, now that I knew the truth. That last night, we were having dinner at a little restaurant on the cliff. There was a waiter, just a boy, maybe 20. He asked if everything was okay. I said yes. I smiled. Her hands trembled. When he left, Mark didn't say a word. I thought he was enjoying the view. But later, in the hotel room, he shut the door and... Her lips tightened. He called me a flirt. I felt a cold wave roll down my spine. The worst abuse rarely begins with a blow. It begins with a word, a seed planted with poisonous precision. I told him he was overreacting. He laughed at me. Ariana swallowed hard. He said I was the kind of woman who didn't realize how inappropriate she was. He said his mother warned him. Of course she did. Helen was engineering this long before the wedding. The next day, Ariana continued, brought me flowers and apologized. He said he only reacted that way because he loved me. Because he was afraid of losing me. She looked up at me with eyes full of shame. That was the first fracture, Mom, and I didn't see it. I took her hand. It wasn't your job to see it. It was his job not to do it. A tiny, broken smile. The next time, she whispered, was 2 months later, at a work celebration. My boss hugged me. A normal hug. But Mark said I embarrassed him, that I let men touch me, that I didn't respect our marriage. Her voice cracked as she added, he yelled at me the whole night, Mom. In the car. In the house. He said I made him look like a fool. I felt so guilty I apologized to him. The guilt victims carry is heavy enough to shatter bone. That's when I started adjusting. Ariana said, voice hollow. I stopped talking to male colleagues. Stopped staying late at work. Stopped wearing clothes he didn't like. Stopped smiling too much. Stopped being myself. And then, I asked gently. 8 agonizing seconds passed before she spoke again. Then he pushed me. Ariana lifted her fingers to her hairline, touching a spot only she could still feel. He pushed me into the wall so hard I hit my head. I couldn't see straight for a minute. He cried afterward. Bought me a diamond necklace the next day. Took me to a fancy restaurant. He said he didn't know what came over him. That he'd go to therapy. Did he? I asked, though I already knew the answer. 2 sessions, Ariana said bitterly. Then he said the therapist didn't understand him. That she favored women, told him he was wrong. Of course she did. I muttered. Abusers don't want help, they want control. Ariana nodded slowly. That's when he started involving his mother more. Helen moved closer. 3 blocks away. She visited every day, sometimes with her own key. I clenched my jaw. She raided my kitchen, Ariana said, voice shaking. Without asking, she threw out food she didn't approve of. She criticized everything, my cooking, my clothes, my work, and Mark always defended her. Her breath hitched. One day I came home and found her rearranging my closet. She told me wives must look proper for their husbands. I felt a familiar heat rising in my chest. And then, Ariana's eyes filled with tears. Then came the first real blow. I held her tightly. Tell me. She inhaled shakily. I was chopping onions. Helen said my kitchen smelled bad. Mark came home in a mood and said the house smelled awful. I told him I had opened the windows. He said I talked back too much. Then, her voice broke. He punched me, Mom. He punched me so hard I fell. Dad's Japanese knife hit the floor and bent. I remember staring at it thinking, Dad, I need you. I closed my eyes. The pain in her voice was a knife to the heart. Helen was there. Ariana whispered. She told me this was normal, that wives learn. She taught me how to cover the bruise. Yellow concealer first, then foundation. She said it like she was giving beauty tips. My breath caught. She said she never let her own husband misbehave, that she controlled him. Mom, I don't think Helen was a victim. I think she was the abuser. I looked at my daughter, at her trembling hands, at the strength she didn't even know she still had. Ariana, I said, none of this is your fault. She leaned into me like she used to at age 5 after nightmares. I didn't want to disappoint you. She whispered, you defend women every day. How could I admit I had become one of them? Oh, my love, I said softly, you are not weak. You survived. That makes you stronger than both of them combined. We stayed on her childhood bed until her tears finally quieted. She fell asleep in my arms. But I didn't sleep because everything my daughter had just revealed wasn't just a confession. It was a timeline, a pattern, a legal map. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. The war Mark and Helen started wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first sign that the storm had begun came early in the morning. Long before Ariana woke up, I was sitting at the kitchen counter with a cup of untouched coffee, reviewing old case documents to keep my mind steady. My phone buzzed once, then again, and then 5 times in a row. Unknown numbers, private callers. Alerts. I opened the first one expecting some routine notification, but my breath caught halfway in my chest. Someone had sent a mass press release to the media, using a burner email, claiming that I had fabricated everything that happened. They painted me as an overly emotional mother who couldn't accept her son-in-law's success. They described Ariana as unstable, irrational, and dramatic. The wording was polished, strategic, perfectly designed to plant doubt. It had Helen's fingerprints all over it. The kind of woman who weaponized etiquette, reputation, and her country club influence like a blade. And beside her, Mark, the practiced charmer who could twist truth into decorative lies with a smile. By the time Ariana walked down the stairs, her eyes still puffy from restless sleep, dozens of smaller blogs and gossip pages had already reposted the statement. She froze in the middle of the kitchen when she saw the headline on my laptop. Her hand slowly lifted to her chest, fingers trembling as if she had forgotten how to breathe. They're saying I lied, she whispered. They're saying you lied. I reached over and closed the laptop gently before the panic could fully swallow her. This is their first move, I said calmly. But it's not truth, it's strategy. And we will counter it. But even as I said the words, I felt the pressure building in my chest. I had years of legal battles behind me, but nothing prepares you for a war waged against your own child. The second attack hit hours later. I didn't even realize something was wrong until my receptionist called me, voice shaky. Alana, we're getting dozens of 1-star reviews. All at once. All saying the same thing. I logged into my firm's page and felt a coldness steal up my spine. It was a coordinated smear, reviews claiming I manipulated evidence, invented stories, coached women to lie, destroyed families. All lies. All part of their plan. The timestamps were identical. The profile pictures were fake. The language was too similar. Mark and Helen hadn't just reacted out of fear. They had prepared for this long before we ever discovered anything. Ariana sat near me, staring at her trembling hands. This is because of me, she said in a voice so small it broke something inside me. No, I said sharply. This is because of them. Their cruelty, their fear, their power, not you. But she didn't look convinced. The third attack arrived disguised as concern. A neighbor knocked on our door, smiling tightly as she asked Ariana if she was feeling better. The subtext simmered beneath every word. Someone had talked. Someone had twisted the story. As always, gossip moves faster than truth. When the neighbor left, Ariana stood frozen in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the door like it had become a wall closing in. "They're telling people," she murmured. "They're making me look like some unstable person." I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let them talk. Their words aren't facts." But the fourth attack was the one that nearly pushed her over the edge. That afternoon, Ariana received a message from her workplace. They were placing her on temporary leave until things settled. No one said it outright, but the meaning was clear. Her reputation had been tainted. A cloud of doubt hung over her. People didn't want to be associated with her until everything was clarified. She read the message twice, her expression fading into something hollow and lost. "I worked so hard," she whispered. "I gave everything to that job. And now they think," her voice cracked. I stepped forward and held her gently. "People love easy stories," I said. "They don't want to imagine someone they know has suffered, so they convince themselves you must be exaggerating, or wrong, or making it up. It makes their world simpler." She leaned into me, silent tears sliding down her cheek. The fifth strike came through the mail. 3 anonymous letters. One filled with newspaper clippings about false accusation cases, one stuffed with vague threats typed in stiff, emotionless sentences. The last one, the most unsettling, simply said, "You should have stayed quiet." No name, no signature, nothing but the weight of menace. Ariana's fingers shook as she held that one. "They're watching us," she whispered. "Someone is watching us." I placed the letter into a plastic sleeve with practiced calm, but inside, my stomach twisted. Someone was indeed watching. The sixth blow was public. Helen appeared outside her mansion with a polished statement prepared. Her voice broke at all the right places. Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. All performance. "My son is being destroyed by lies," she said into the microphones. "Our family is suffering. We love Ariana, but she has been confused for a long time. We only want to help her." It was masterful manipulation. The audience nodded sympathetically. Cameras clicked. Sympathy shifted in her direction like iron to a magnet. Ariana watched the broadcast on her phone, horrified. "She's pretending she cares about me," she whispered. "She never cared." I took the phone from her, set it aside, and said, "Monsters wear pearls too." The seventh strike slid silently under our door one evening, a printed article drafted for a major magazine, calling me an overbearing mother who weaponizes the legal system. Smoothly written, sleek, professional. They weren't just throwing dirt. They were shaping a narrative, crafting a reputation we hadn't asked for. One that would follow us if we didn't fight back. By the eighth strike, the world around us had shifted. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Friends grew distant. Ariana's phone lit up with messages from people asking if the rumors were true. Her closest friend sent a cold text saying she needed space. And that was the moment Ariana broke. She stood in the living room, arms hanging limply at her sides, tears sliding down soundlessly. "How can people believe them?" she asked. "How can they just switch sides?" I walked to her and took her hands, grounding her. "Because lies are loud," I said. "Louder than truth at first. But truth has endurance, it lasts." She nodded slowly, though her eyes were still filled with betrayal. The ninth strike hit me personally. An IRS agent called asking about an anonymous complaint suggesting I was mismanaging funds. Completely fabricated. But enough to open an inquiry. Enough to drain time, energy, and resources. Enough to slow us down. Sufficient. Ruthless. By the 10th strike, I realized something chilling. This wasn't reaction. This was a plan, a blueprint. A method honed through practice. Mark and Helen weren't improvising. They were executing a strategy they had used before, maybe on others. Ariana looked at me one evening with tired eyes and whispered, "Are they going to destroy us, Mom?" I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and replied with a confidence she didn't yet feel, "No. They are going to reveal themselves. And when they do, the whole world will see who they really are. Because storms may tear at the walls, shake the windows, and rattle the ground beneath you. But storms also wash everything clean. And this storm was just beginning. Ariana didn't break all at once. People imagine victims collapse in a single moment, but the truth is quieter, slower, like a thread unraveling stitch by stitch until the entire fabric of who they were comes apart. It started with tiny cracks, The first crack appeared in the kitchen while I was making breakfast. She stared at her reflection in the microwave door, touching the faint bruise on her cheek, whispering something so softly I barely caught it. Maybe I provoked him. I put the spatula down immediately. Ariana. She blinked as if just realizing she'd spoken the words aloud. I didn't mean. Her voice stuttered into silence. I shouldn't have spilled the water. I shouldn't have. You could have set the table on fire. I interrupted, and he still had no right to touch you. But she didn't respond. She just nodded politely, the way battered women do when the truth feels too heavy to absorb. The second crack was uglier. A day later, she was sitting on the floor in the hallway, her back against the wall, her hands gripping her knees. She was shaking, hyperventilating. I knelt. What happened? She pointed at her phone. Blank screen. Silent. I thought it vibrated, she whispered. Just the idea of his name appearing on her phone sent her spiraling. He's in jail. I reminded her softly. For now. She breathed. People like Mark don't stay there. They get out. They always get out. Her eyes were hollow. Terrified of a door that wasn't even opening yet. The third crack came when she tried to shower. I heard the water running for too long, almost an hour. When she finally came out, wrapped in a towel, I saw her hands trembling violently. What's wrong? I asked. She didn't speak. She turned around and showed me. Red marks on her back, not from him, from herself, scrubbing too hard. Trying to wash away something psychological, something that doesn't come off with water or soap. I felt dirty, she whispered. I felt like his hands were still on me. I held her for a long time. She cried without sound, her tears soaking the towel. I'm sorry, she kept repeating. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. For what? I demanded gently. For being weak. That word stabbed straight through my chest. She wasn't weak. She was wounded. There's a difference. The breaking point didn't come from a headline or a threat or a lawsuit. It came from a memory. We were sorting laundry. A mundane task. Normal. Safe. Ariana picked up one of her old dresses. A simple blue one she used to wear during the first year of her marriage. She just stared at it, her eyes growing glassy. I love this dress, she said softly, and then she laughed. Not a happy laugh, a fractured one, a sound made of broken glass. He said it made me look innocent. He liked when I looked innocent. He said it made him feel powerful. She pressed the dress against her chest, tears sliding down her cheeks. I didn't even notice when he stopped calling me cute and started calling me stupid. I sat beside her. He didn't just hurt me physically, Mom. She whispered. He changed me. He made me into someone I don't even recognize. What do you see now? I asked gently. A failure, she breathed. A woman who let a man control her. A woman who didn't get out sooner. A woman who... No. I cut in sharply. Look at me. She lifted her eyes. You survived, I said. You walked through hell, and you lived. That is strength, Ariana. That is courage. But she wasn't ready to believe it yet, and it only got worse. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of retching. Ariana was in the bathroom on her knees, vomiting from stress. I held her hair back, rubbing her spine until the shakes in her limbs softened. When she finally looked up at me, her face was pale, sweaty, exhausted. I don't think I can do this, she whispered. I don't think I can fight him? Yes, you can. No, she said, voice cracking. You don't understand, they're everywhere. His family, his friends, the internet. I'm being hunted from all sides. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. My heart won't stop racing. I wake up terrified. I go to sleep terrified. I feel like I'm drowning, and every time I try to swim up, someone pushes my head down again. I sat beside her on the bathroom floor. You're not drowning, I said. You're healing. Healing feels like drowning at first. She sobbed then. Loud, heartbreaking sobs that shook her whole body. Why did he choose me? She cried. Why did he ruin me? He chose you because you are good, I said. Because you are kind. Because you are trusting. Abusers hunt empathy. They see it as weakness when it is actually your greatest strength. As she leaned her head against the bathtub, eyes closed. I want to disappear, she whispered. I want everything to stop. That was when fear truly gripped me. Not fear of Mark, fear of losing my daughter to the aftermath of what he'd done. I cupped her face gently. Ariana, look at me. You are not disappearing. You're fighting. Even breathing right now is fighting. But she was fading. She was emotionally exhausted in a way I couldn't fix alone. The next morning, she didn't get out of bed. Around noon, I entered her room. She was awake, staring at the wall, eyes unfocused. "I don't want breakfast," she murmured. "It's lunch." "I don't want that either." She turned her head slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you think I ruined your life too?" My heart cracked. "No," I said fiercely. "You are the reason I fight." But she didn't believe me. Not yet. She rolled onto her side and pulled the blanket over her head. I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. Slow, shallow breaths that belonged to someone who had been emotionally destroyed piece by piece. That night, when I thought she was asleep, I heard it. A soft whisper. "Aplia. Dead, I wish you were here." My throat closed. She missed the only man who had ever loved her unconditionally, and she felt utterly alone. But she wasn't, not while I was alive. I stood there in the dark, watching her small shape beneath the covers, and made a silent vow they could attack us. They could smear us, they could try to destroy us, but they would never break her spirit. Not while I still had breath in my lungs. Ariana wasn't strong enough yet, so I would be strong for both of us, and God help anyone who stood in my way. You said the moment Ariana said, "Then let's finish this." Something shifted between us. An invisible line crossed, a door opening that had been locked tight inside her since the day she married Mark. She wasn't healed. She wasn't confident. But she was awake, a spark of who she used to be flickered alive again. I held onto that spark like it was oxygen. We spent the next few days analyzing the recordings. I made copies, stored them in 3 encrypted drives, emailed it to myself under coded file names, and hid one in my safe. Because dealing with people like Mark and Helen meant assuming every step forward had a trap lurking behind it. Ariana listened to each file once, only once. She couldn't stomach more than that. The last recording especially turned her face white, as if learning Helen had killed her own husband cracked the final illusion Ariana had clung to. "Mom," she said quietly that night as we sat on the couch, the glow of the TV flickering across her tired face. "What if Helen tries to hurt us the same way?" I didn't tell her the truth. The truth was I already feared that. Instead, I reached over and took her hand. "She won't. Because we won't give her the chance." She nodded slowly, though doubt still clouded her eyes. Later, when Ariana finally went upstairs to rest, I stayed awake long into the night, the audio files echoing in my mind. Helen's voice. Cold, calculated, self-righteous, a woman who believed she was untouchable. And Mark, his arrogance wasn't natural, it was inherited, molded. No, this wasn't a typical domestic abuse case. This was a generational monster raised by a greater monster. Around 20:13 a.m., I heard footsteps. Ariana stood at the top of the stairs, pale, trembling. "Mom," she whispered. "Can I sleep here tonight?" She hadn't asked that since she was 9. I opened my arms. She curled into me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. I stroked her hair gently until her breathing steadied. Just when I thought she was finally asleep, she murmured, "I keep dreaming she's watching me." "She's not here," I whispered, "but she will be," Ariana replied softly. "I can feel it." I didn't correct her. Sometimes intuition is a warning we should never ignore. The next morning brought a new punch to the gut. I opened the front door to pick up the newspaper and saw it immediately, spray painted across the mailbox in bold red letters, "Lie Ars." Ariana gasped behind me. "This is escalating," I muttered under my breath. 2 neighbors stepped outside simultaneously, their eyes narrowing toward us. One whispered something to the other and pointed. Another man closed his blinds the moment Ariana looked his way. The smear campaign had spilled into our street. When we got inside, Ariana was trembling again. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "I didn't do anything wrong." I cupped her face gently. "They're trying to break you. They're trying to make you doubt yourself. But you know the truth." She nodded, but the fear didn't leave her eyes. I knew then what I had to do next. That afternoon, I went to the police department and met with Commander Miller. He'd known me for years, respected me. When I played the recordings for him, his expression shifted from confusion to alarm to something darker. "Elena," he said quietly, "this audio, it's enough to reopen multiple investigations." "Good," I replied, "because I'm done playing defense." But before we could go further, he leaned forward. "There's more," he said. "You're not gonna like this." My stomach tensed. "What?" He slid a file across the desk. No label, no case number, just a manila folder. "We received an anonymous tip about 2 months ago. he said. Someone claiming Helen may have been involved in her husband's death. My pulse raced. You didn't. We didn't have evidence, he said. Until now. I opened the folder. Inside were old photographs, even older reports, hospital notes, toxicology tests that didn't match the heart attack narrative, witness statements that were dismissed as gossip, a report from a neighbor who claimed she heard a fight the night James died. Miller sighed heavily. This family has a history, Elena. Not just your son-in-law, his mother, her mother. Even James's brother filed a complaint 20 years ago and then suddenly withdrew it. Withdrawn or forced? I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. When I returned home, Ariana wasn't in the living room, or the kitchen, or her room. I found her sitting on the back porch steps, staring into the yard. Mom, she said quietly without turning around, why didn't he hit her? I sat beside her. Ooh, my mother. You, she said, almost in a whisper. Why did he hurt me but never even raise his voice to you? Her question pierced me. Because abusers pick targets they think won't leave, I said gently. He knew I would never tolerate it. He knew you would tolerate self-blame before you'd tolerate hurting someone else. That's why he went after you. A tear slid down her cheek. I hate that part of me, she whispered. I hate the part of me that stayed. You stayed because you were manipulated, I said, not because you were weak. She finally looked at me. Something had changed in her expression, something sharp, something determined. Mom, she said, what happens now? Now was the moment everything shifted. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final copy of the recordings. We fight back, I said, not just with lawyers, not just with police, with truth, and this time we go public. Her breath hitched. They'll come after us harder. I know, I said, and you'll be a target too. I know. She swallowed, staring at the USB drive like it was a weapon placed in her hands. Do you think we can win? Won the moment you stopped being afraid, I said softly. The rest is strategy. Ariana curled her fingers around the drive tightly. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered. I believed her. That night, we sat together at the dining table, lights dim, shadows dancing against the walls as if the house itself was holding its breath. Ariana opened her laptop and uploaded the evidence into a secure cloud vault. Then she did something I didn't expect. She looked at me with steady eyes and said, Mom, I want to tell my story. Are you sure? I asked gently. She nodded. Not the trembling kind of nod she had before. A firm one. They tried to silence me. They tried to erase me. They tried to ruin me. But I'm done hiding. She closed the laptop with a quiet click that felt like a declaration. For the first time, truly, my daughter didn't look like a victim. She looked like a woman ready for war. And deep down, I knew Helen and Mark had no idea what was coming, because they had awakened the one force they could never defeat. A mother and daughter who decided to fight back together.